In the bustling city of Lagos, Adebimpe was the queen of fashion. Her shop, Bimpe's Couture, sat on the most prestigious street, catering to the elite of society. Her reputation for making beautiful garments was unmatched. Whenever her customers put on her creations, they marveled at how exquisite and luxurious they looked, not knowing that their eyes were deceiving them. Unbeknownst to anyone, Adebimpe held a dark secret. Years ago, during a desperate time, she visited a small, forgotten village and sought out Iesu, an old sorceress rumored to be able to grant any wish for a price. "I need something to make me the best tailor," Adebimpe had begged Iesu, her hands trembling with the weight of her ambition. The old woman's milky eyes studied her. "Are you willing to pay the price, Omomi?" Iesu had asked in a voice that seemed to echo from deep within her chest. "I'll do anything," Adebimpe had replied, her desperation overcoming any hesitation. Iesu had handed her a small spool of thread and a needle. "This thread will give you what you want. When you sew, people will see what you want them to see: elegance, luxury, wealth. But beware, child, for what you weave with deception will one day unravel." Adebimpe had barely heard the warning, too excited by the possibilities. Over the years, her success grew, and the enchantment did its work. Customers came in droves, leaving with smiles on their faces, enchanted by what they believed were the finest garments they had ever seen. One afternoon, Damilola, a young, ambitious fashion designer, stepped into Adebimpe's shop. She had admired Adebimpe's work for years and couldn't believe her luck when she was offered a chance to apprentice under the famous Tailor. "I'm honored to learn from you, Ma," Damilola said eagerly on her first day, her eyes wide with admiration. Adebimpe smiled, but there was a guardedness behind her eyes. "Stay focused, and you'll learn everything you need to," she replied, her voice firm. For the first few weeks, Damilola worked diligently, but something began to trouble her. The fabrics Adebimpe used weren't as luxurious as she'd imagined. In fact, they were almost ragged. One day, as Damilola was helping a customer try on an agbada, she noticed how poorly stitched the garment was, even though the customer was admiring it as if it were made of gold. "Doesn't this fabric feel divine?" the customer exclaimed, twirling in front of the mirror. Damilola forced a smile. "It looks beautiful," she said, though inside she was puzzled. "How can they not see what I'm seeing?" After that, Damilola's suspicion grew. One evening, after Adebimpe left for the night, she returned to the shop. Her hands trembling, she opened the drawers where the fabrics were kept. What she found shocked her to her core. All the garments, dresses, skirts, and even the agbadas were nothing but rags. Torn, misaligned, and poorly stitched together. "What is going on?" Damilola whispered to herself, feeling a knot of dread form in her stomach. As she rifled through the drawers, she stumbled upon an old, worn book tucked beneath a pile of clothes. She opened it to find page after page of strange symbols and incantations. Then her eyes landed on one particular spell, Thread of Illusion. "This can't be," Damilola gasped as she realized the truth. Adebimpe wasn't a genius. She was using dark magic to make her customers believe they were wearing the finest clothes when in reality they were dressed in rags. Determined to expose Adebimpe, Damilola crafted a plan. She decided to host a private fashion showcase. She would invite Adebimpe's most loyal clients, but instead of using Adebimpe's illusion thread, she would create real, high-quality garments. The idea was simple. Let the customers see the truth for themselves. The day of the showcase arrived, and among the guests was Mrs. Oladuni, one of Adebimpe's most loyal and influential clients. She walked in wearing a dazzling gown Adebimpe had crafted just for her. "Damilola, darling, I hope you've got something as stunning as what Bimpe made for me," Mrs. Oladuni exclaimed, her voice dripping with pride. Damilola smiled. "I'm sure you'll love what I have to show you, Ma. But first, please touch the fabric." Mrs. Oladuni reached out to touch one of the dresses in Damilola's collection, and the moment her fingers brushed the real fabric, her face fell. What is this?" Mrs. Oladuni whispered. She looked down at her own dress, her enchanted eyes starting to clear. "Wait, what is this?" she gasped, pulling at the fabric of her own gown. The seams came apart in her hands, revealing the truth beneath. The gown was nothing but scraps of fabric, barely held together. The room fell silent as the other guests began to realize the same horrifying truth. Adebimpe's dresses, once thought to be works of art, were nothing but rags. "You've been deceived!" Damilola shouted, seizing the moment. "Adebimpe has been using magic to fool all of you." Gasps filled the room as Mrs. Oladuni turned pale. "How could she?" she muttered, her voice shaking with disbelief. "We paid her so much. We trusted her." Adebimpe, who had been standing in the back of the room, suddenly bolted for the door, but Damilola was faster. She blocked her path, her eyes blazing with fury. "You've lied to these people for years, Ma," Damilola said, her voice low and fierce. "You've taken their money and given them nothing but rags." Adebimpe's face contorted with anger. "You don't understand," she hissed. "I did what I had to do to survive. Without the magic, I would have been nothing." "You were never nothing," Damilola replied, her voice steady. "But now you're worse than nothing. You're a fraud." The crowd surged forward, voices rising in anger as Adebimpe's once loyal customers demanded justice. But before anyone could grab her, Adebimpe slipped through the crowd and fled into the night, disappearing into the streets of Lagos, leaving behind her legacy of deceit. In the aftermath, Damilola's name spread throughout the fashion world. She was hailed as the designer who had not only exposed Adebimpe's lies, but also brought integrity back to the industry. As for Adebimpe, she returned to the village where it all began. She knelt before Iya Esu, tears streaming down her face. "Please, help me," Adebimpe begged. "Take it all back." But Iesu shook her head slowly. "I warned you, child. Deception can never be undone. You wove your own ruin." And with that, Adebimpe disappeared from Lagos, leaving nothing behind but the empty shell of her once famous shop, Bimpe's Couture, a reminder of what happens when ambition and magic intertwine.